the booklet that says, you know what, guys, instead of like talking about asthma this week, we're going to chop this book up a little bit over a week or two's time. And then by the end of it, you're going to learn not only about asthma, but about the lungs and about these different medicines and why things are being done to help yourself or your classmate. You're going to learn that your classmate, when he's out from school, this is why. And it's not a joke. It's something that he needs to deal or she needs to deal with, right? So there's all host of things from a teaching realm that you could twist the angle a little bit to make it a little less threatening. I'll say more fun. And illness is never fun, but more fun, if you will. Maybe a little more engaging, where the child is like, oh, I don't just have to read a book about asthma. I could read a book about this adventure. I'm actually learning about that as part of that adventure.
Welcome to Beyond the Wheeze, the podcast where perseverance meets potential. I'm Josh Realm, public speaker, marathon runner, asthma advocate, and your host as we explore the intersection of health, fitness, and resilience. Whether you're managing asthma, chasing a new personal best, or simply looking for inspiration, Beyond the Wheeze is here to show you that no challenge is too great to overcome. Together, we'll uncover stories, insights, and strategies to help you push beyond your limits. It's time to breathe deeply, move forward, and unlock your true potential, one step at a time.
Today, I'm honored to welcome Dr. Mark Schnellinger to Beyond the Wheeze. Dr. Schnellinger is a pediatric emergency medicine physician at Children's Minnesota, where he has cared for children and families for nearly 20 years. He's treated countless asthma flare-ups and other respiratory emergencies, helping kids navigate frightening and sometimes life-threatening situations. He is also the author of The Medicine Stars, an adventure novel for middle schoolers that blends fantasy, mythology, and accurate medical insight. The book teaches children about how their bodies work during illness and injury, with a special focus on asthma, and has been endorsed by Asthma Canada and pediatric experts as well. The goal is to empower kids, reduce fear, and help families feel more confident managing conditions like asthma. Medical disclaimer before we get started: the content in this episode is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for personalized medical advice. Listeners should always consult their healthcare provider for diagnosis or treatment of any medical condition. With all that being said, Dr. Schnellinger, thank you so much for agreeing to come on.
All right. Well, first and foremost, thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Josh, for having me. This is always an honor to be able to talk about these kinds of things and to try to spread education and childhood welfare. So thank you again for everyone for joining in.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you're doing it right. You're an author, you're a pediatric emergency medicine doctor, and we're going to get into your book a little bit as well. Talk about why you wrote it and really what your idea is behind it and how you wish to target people and help patients and families as well.
Yeah, I look forward. This is going to be great.
So we're going to start on reflecting on pediatric emergency medicine. With nearly 2 decades in pediatric emergency medicine, that's truly incredible. And what drew you to this field and what keeps you motivated, especially when treating children with asthma flare-ups?
So I'm very thankful to be on Beyond the Wheeze podcast, but I have to admit, I got to start this conversation off by lying. If my mom is watching, she would say, when I was 5 years old, I swear I said I wanted to be a children's doctor. But she keeps correcting me. Said, no, you said you wanted to be a dentist. I said, no, I want to be a children's doctor. So I held true to that path and went to medical school and then did pediatrics. And then where I trained in Brooklyn in New York and Maimonides Medical Center, they have some outlying hospitals that we kind of have to rotate through. And they told me, this month you're going to go to Coney Island Hospital, a smaller hospital that we serviced. And part of that time there, you're going to do the pediatric ER as your training. Okay, that sounds great and could be a little daunting, but I went, and I'm not going to lie, I walked in and I was like, this is for me. This is the environment I love. It just, sometimes people have all stories where they turn a corner or they look around it to buy something and pop, there's their future wife, that kind of thing where like, oh my God, out of nowhere, here comes this force. And that was the PDR to me. It was just, I just loved the hustle and bustle of it, the people, the action, obviously not just the kids, but in general. I am, as we've talked before, a former hockey player. So that sort of read and react style was my kind of thing. And I just gravitated towards it and just have loved it ever since.
From my perspective, living with severe asthma, ER visits can be scary and overwhelming. In your experience, What are the biggest challenges children and families face during asthma crises? And how do you try to ease that fear?
Well, I think that first and foremost, there's a whole host of factors that may affect even getting to care, right? There's a whole host of socioeconomic levels. We deal with different languages. We deal with different ability to get to the medicines they might need, right? And then if I turned it around and said, hey, Josh, okay, you're 9 again, and you're in the doctor's office with your mom or dad or guardian, and they're giving you some treatments for asthma, and they say, okay, it's beyond what we can care for here. We're going to send you to the ER at the local ER or wherever you may be to get further care. And then they tell you you might actually have to go in an ambulance to go there, right? Because you're maybe having a bad exacerbation or not. And then you arrive, and then there's all these people, all different, wearing different color scrubs. One's a nurse, one's a doctor, one's a PA, one's a respiratory therapist, one does the janitorial work. When you walk into the environment as a child, already not being able to breathe very well, how's that going to make you feel, right? It's going to be pretty anxiety provoking. I'm going to this place. What are they going to do to me there? All these binging and bonging machines all over. That could be daunting and very anxiety provoking, which in fact will then worsen your asthma, right? You're already having a tough time to breathe. Now your heart rate's up, and now what's going to happen here? So I think that the most important factor, at least what I've learned and what I've seen, which is what a crux of this book is, trying to get yourself on the child's level and to try to ease their worry as best as possible by in an odd kind of way being their teammate instead of the doctor talking down at them or towards them or big words and so on and so forth. The key is to try to get on the level of the child and then establish a team relationship, so to speak, because in that process, here comes a bunch of the child commitment to the child and confidence in the child in you, because again, you're not just another doctor with it, coming in with, and nowadays with masks and all sorts of things that might hinder your appearance as well, which is anxiety provoking as well. So getting down into that level is very important in my opinion.
As someone who's lived with severe asthma, I know how critical it is to recognize symptoms early. And for context, asthma is one of the most chronic diseases in Canadian children, and about 1 in 13. That's a lot. And understanding this helps families stay alert and prepared for flare-ups. Just a little bit of an educational sidebar there. Question number 3, how have you seen pediatric asthma care evolve over your career for treatment protocols to patient and family education?
I think first and foremost has been, I'll be honest, from when I started to now, there's a lot more, maybe because asthma incidence is also rising, so the more of a focus is put on it. We obviously see a large number of patients with flare-ups and whatnot in the ER. There have been improved or at least new and improved medications, dual medications along the way that could be offered. But the one thing that I find, and again, it was not, maybe it was there, I just didn't even know, I didn't even know it, was the asthma action plan. I find that is much more of a powerful tool recently than it ever was before in giving families at least some sort of guideline as to, green, yellow, red zone, so on and so forth. Do these medicines at this time. And then obviously you need to go to the hospital. It gives them some the big part of it. And you lived this, your parents did this. Autonomy is a big part of this. I can't control my illness if I can't control it. I need to be part of the game plan here. And if it gives a guideline to families, avoids another ER visit, hopefully, that is, in my opinion, one of the biggest factors that has come about and is more, I use more and more nowadays to help families along. It definitely has, in my opinion, has made an impact, at least at certain levels.
So I'd like to move on now to The Medicine Stars, which is your book. It blends fantasy, mythology, and medical insight. What inspired you to take this approach to educate children about asthma and other illnesses?
I'll keep it short, but the origin of this book goes back before the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic. I had a good friend at Children's named Tim Kehoe, and he was an author himself and an inventor. And he only worked at Children's in the marketing department because he was essentially an entrepreneur, and maybe a little different in Canada than the States, but he needed health insurance, right? So he had to work at Children's in the marketing department to provide that because he had 5 children at home. And someone came up to him and said, "Hey, listen, I think you and Tim would kind of hit it off. And somehow through whatever connections, we ended up on a similar committee together through the hospital. And true to word, we did hit it off. And next thing you know, we were kind of having coffee here and there. In between, we had a free moment. We'd meet up, and he was so encouraging. He said, "Boy, Mark, you have so many ideas. You have so many like creative outlets. Like you should write. You need to write. Like please just stop putting pen to paper, so to speak." And I said, "Well, I have two kids. I have this, I have that. I don't know what even know what to write." He said, "No, find your niche. Believe me, you'll find it. You just look a little harder and you'll find it. And in fact, I'll show it to my agent if you write something." And he's so encouraging, so positive, and so kind. And I said, "Okay, well, we'll see. And then he, we wouldn't see each other for a month or two or three because of work and life and things. And then I went to that same committee, and I was driving to the hospital, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to see Tim today. Great. Maybe we'll get a cup of coffee after and kind of see what he's up to, what he's inventing these days, things like that." And I went to the meeting, and someone walked by me and kind of put their hand on my shoulder and said, "Hey, man, sorry about Tim." I was like, "Oh." I'm like, "Oh man, he's not gonna be here today. Darn, it would have been a much better meeting if he was here." We just goof off a bit, but then someone came to me, and whenever somebody does the arm around the shoulder maneuver, "Hey, go to take a walk," that's a problem. So we started walking and said, "Hey, listen, I want to let you know that there was an accident and Tim died," and it kind of really just, here's a guy could finally kind of geek out about this stuff as an adult appropriately, about writing or about inventing, about toys, about things like that we could just have fun with, and that he was very much involved in. And then just like that, he was, from a selfish level, obviously his family comes first, but from a selfish level, it's kind of just taken away. And short time after, I sat down in front of the computer and I said, "Okay, I made him a promise that I'm going to write, and I'm going to do that." And I sat down and I said, "Now I need to kind of come up with my angle and my niche, and how am I going to go about this?" And he had always encouraged me to use my strengths, like in my knowledge of the ER, in that process. So that's kind of what kicked the ball off at that time. And then during the midst of the pandemic, obviously, a lot, as you know, and those who lived it know, the world was upside down and people were losing jobs, and there's really no time to write a book right now, especially as an ER doctor dealing with the things I was dealing with. So I put it down. And then I went to work one day, and I met this young lady who was there for a different reason, but pretty ill. But she knew she was going to be in the hospital, so she brought her mom was wise enough to bring a little tackle box full of charms and things, like hearts and stars and moons and things like that, so she could maybe do a craft while she was getting cared for, or once she was feeling a little better. And in talking to trying to get down to a patient's level, which is I feel is a massive part of all this, I walked in the room and I wanted to listen to her chest, and I said, "Oh, the doctor's favorite symbol is stars." So the original name of this book was "The Stars in Our Sky," and she said, "Oh, that's cool. And she had little things. So I left and I came back a little while later to see how she was doing, and before I even had a chance to show you how resilient children, how beautiful they are, before I even had a chance to say, how are you doing?" She held up this bracelet and said, "I made these for you." And I thought, that is just out of this world. So I have never taken them off since. And I've had a change in the band if it was old. And I went home that night. It was like 1 a.m. And as I often do, I pop my headphones on and kind of let the day go. And I sit down and look at some emails. And I looked at that folder on the computer and said, do I click on that story again that I kind of put aside now for some time? And I did, but oddly enough, it was a whole different version. And I just started writing anew, and come 5 a.m, I had about 70 pages written. I said, "I better go to bed. I have to work tomorrow." But then it went from there, and it just felt by it, and it wasn't such an esoteric illness where most wouldn't understand. You're reading this adventure story, and you're also trying to learn something about asthma. Your brain it has to be you can't let it scatter too much. So I wanted to kind of start with that one and kind of unveil this way of teaching. And here we are.
Man, if that's not motivation to write a book, for you, I don't know what is. That's quite the story. That's quite the path and quite the calling as well. I mean, it seems like everything was kind of pointing at you writing that book.
Yeah, I hope you had a chance to take a look. And I'm not going to lie, along the way, there were, and I'll maybe answer one other question with this story. There were some moments where I actually thought maybe Tim was trying to hint me from beyond, don't go that direction, go this direction with the book. And that's even greater and more powerful. Yeah.
No, that's wild. And yeah, absolutely terrific book. I did have a chance to have a look at it. For those listening, I'm going to link where you can find the book in the show notes. But for quick reference, that's drmarkstar.com. Please check it out. I highly encourage you to do so. As someone who's lived with asthma, I know how empowering it can be to understand what's happening in your body. How did you balance accurate medical information with an engaging story for middle school readers?
Yeah, great question. And to be honest, at the beginning, I thought, okay, this is going to be easy, and it turned out to be one of the most. You're trying to my book, and for those who do in the end read it, you're trying to fit a medical illness in an adventure story. Fit these bits together and somehow seamlessly do that, right? So the publisher, I would write, and you write segments and you send it in, and they kind of review and send back and tell you that it's mostly crap. Do it again, so I have to do it again. But I found during the whole process, which was actually very interesting, that the books, and this one was used to helping authors write children's books of varying ages. So when it came to the medicine bits, when I would send in these pieces, they would kind of, well, take this part out and take that part out. I'm like, oh, that's the whole point. Those are the medicines that we're going to, what is beta ag, beta tro? I'm like, well, that's the medicines that an asthmatic would get. It's like, I have to keep that. That's the whole point. So they didn't see that side. And then I was, when it came to the medicine stuff, I will get to maybe later with one of the other questions, but I turned to some of the professionals that I work with and asked them to just review, hey, what bullet points do you want to take home would be a take home for a parent if you met them for the first time, and they would give their insight. So then I had to take both and try to put them together somehow. And then here comes, these tunnels that are getting swollen and leaky, and the winds are howling and wheezing down there in an effort to try to hide the asthma as best as possible for a child to enjoy and not realize that, oh, I'm reading about what's going on in my body right now. So it was challenging, but at the same time, real fun. And you had to be very creative. One of my colleagues was probably one of the most creative things I've ever read, how you kind of wove the two together kind of seamlessly. And again, that took a lot of people to help do that. It wasn't just me, but a lot of people and their individual critiques and efforts as well. And I've had a couple of people say, if you're given a book by a doctor and say, okay, this is about asthma, the initial look is, there's going to be another asthma book or another book about some medical thing. But I've had a couple of adult people come back to me and say, this is nothing what I thought it was going to be like, in a very different angle. So hopefully it opens an avenue for interest, and maybe, and people like it. It's a different way of looking at a problem.
The In the Classroom section of your book breaks down asthma in a kid-friendly way. How have schools and families responded to this approach?
I think that the most common comment I receive from families that it's helped the parent the most, oddly enough. It's really meant, I was part of it for the child, so that they wouldn't just, they didn't want to talk down to a patient, you want to talk on their level, right? Or at least I don't. So the adventure is the adventure, but then you get well, let me give the kid a little bit of a chance to understand. Don't treat them like a 2-year-old either. Let them read why they're using this inhaler for quick action versus the long action. But what I've found is that the child tends to finish the adventure story and kind of be done with it. And then the parent has kind of taken that in the classroom section and maybe on the side, okay, if my kid asks this question, okay, I kind of know what the basic, because there's many families that don't. And that's part of that medical knowledge aspect that can hinder care as well. So I think that it has provided them a sense of oh, that's why I'm giving the albuterol inhaler for the quick acting and the steroids. Oh, it's kind of a lot of that O factor. Now I get it, or at least I can see it a little better. And then as a result, I can maybe answer my child's questions a little better, or at least when he has another flare, she has another flare, I'm better equipped knowledge-wise why I'm doing these things. And not just the doctor told me to do this.
Were there moments writing the book that surprised you? I know we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but maybe insights from your clinical work that translated into storytelling in, say, unexpected ways.
Yeah, I don't know if there was there were moments there were definitely times where I would write during the day and then go do a shift. And then during that shift, the child would say something or do something. I'm like, oh my God, I just wrote about this today. That's kind of odd. Or I have front row seats to seeing how the children respond to these things. So I was able to see a lot of that and take that back when I did write, to take those lessons at hand. And to go back before, when I said that Tim might have been around, there is the original version of this, I thought, okay, I'm going to be cool here, and I'm going to put the names of the non-main characters are going to all be towns in Minnesota. So I would go through a book, like a little Easter egg. Okay, I'm going to use, this little town will be this person's name in the book. And I was flipping through, and I saw Baxter, Minnesota. I thought, okay, Baxter, Minnesota. It's probably a beautiful little town somewhere. And I said, that'd be perfect for this character named Baxter. That'd be great. And I've never been there. I'm sure it's beautiful. And then I went to work that day, and we get calls from all over the place, right? Like, much like yourself, you have to go, unfortunately, to the bigger hospital sometimes to get further care. That's what we receive. We get calls from the smaller hospitals saying, hey, this child's going to come in, in whatever manner. And I was there 1 minute of work, and they said, hey, there's a doc call, as they call it. Can you get on the phone? And I answered the phone, and the guy said, hey, I'm calling about patient so-and-so. So listen, man, I'm calling from Baxter, Minnesota. And I almost had to put the phone down. I kind of looked around like, wait, are you serious? Baxter, Minnesota? Like, I just wrote it, little experiences like that happened along the way that were not necessarily tied into the asthma part of things, but kept pushing me along. Like, maybe who knows who's watching here. So that definitely factors like that. And like I said, the ability to see right up front how children of varying ages respond to various factors was very not only motivating, but also gave me a lot of ability to go home and write that. Because if you're going to read it, hey man, I lived that. I responded like that myself. Again, I could hopefully inject that within the story of how they felt. So for sure, like that.
For parents and teachers listening, teaching children about asthma in a narrative way can improve adherence to medication, reduce anxiety, which we spoke about, and increase understanding of triggers. Stories really do have the ability to make information stick. I'd like to move on now to health education, fear, and empowerment. One of the central themes in your work is helping kids feel less scared of asthma symptoms, inhalers, or hospitals. From your experience, what practical strategies help children and families gain confidence in managing asthma?
Yeah, again, first and foremost, I think that obviously equipping them with the right materials to be able to do that is obviously essential. The asthma action plans we talked about, but from an ER standpoint, as I've reiterated a few times during this moment, getting down onto their level is key to gaining their trust and their confidence when they get go. Again, the child is oftentimes very scared and anxious when they arrive. How do you reduce that so that they trust you, so that you can do the things you need to do to hopefully make them feel better? I just had a patient 2 days ago. This is great because it's like a real life situation there for asthma. He was 9 years old, and he was breathing hard, but he was able to watch the show on an iPad, and his father was with him and very kind. And I would, again, to try to get down on that child's level, I put my stethoscope on to listen to his chest, as you've had done 8 million times. And I looked down, I didn't say a word to the child, and I looked down at the iPad, and he was watching Scary with a Chance of Meatballs. No, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, the movie. And I just looked, because I was listening, I looked down and I pointed to that bed and kind of looked, and he looked at me and I said, and he looked at me and goes, I said, great. And then I took my stethoscope off, and the father looked at me and goes, what was this? I'm like, oh, I just asked him if he was watching 1 or the sequel, number 2. And he told me he's watching 2. Good choice. So just that alone, the child looked at me like, hey, wait a second here. This guy kind of knows Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Like, that already gives a child, as I find, a level of comfort with the provider that, hey, we're kind of on the same level here right now. So he's going to tell me I need to do this math thing. Maybe I'm a little more apt to do that because he's not telling me I have to do it, but rather we're kind of buddies now, right? And now I'm a little more comfortable where I'm sitting, okay. And then the most common question I get is, there going to be a shot today or needles? And unfortunately, like yourself in the ambulance, many times asthma there's not. And once I can answer that question, hopefully no, and not lie to the patient, then things are already in the positive direction. If I walk in and say, child is looking at Pokemon cards, and I say, oh, what form of Charizard you got there? That blows like some kids' minds. Like, this old crotchety doctor knows what Charizard is and Pokemon, but it's my effort to try to get down to their, not down to level, but on their level. And it's amazing how much children will respond to that, and then kind of give you their confidence or their teammateship, if that's a word, to allow this process to now proceed. For sure.
You're making me comfortable here, Dr. Schnellinger. In regards to
Right.
the needles, I do remember as well.
Yeah.
They never fooled around when it came to my arterial cap gases. They always
Oh,
told me it's not going to feel too great.
yeah,
It never did.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And hopefully, in time, like you said, with time as you've aged and the process has aged and maybe more modalities, kids are less, stricken with those things, and can be treated in other ways to avoid, right? Or other modalities like creams and things to help numb the skin if you have the time to do that, or ultrasound now, things like that, where these are parts of the care, right? And again, because the next time you go to the hospital, oh no, here we go again with all those pokes and stuff, right? You certainly remember all that stuff, right?
How important is it for children to really understand what's happening inside their bodies? I know from my own journey, knowing what's happening during an asthma attack really did make a huge difference in managing it safely.
Yeah, and I think that it's very important. Again, it's depending, again, in my world, what level, what age the child is to really understand or not. And I find that if you walk in and start talking about spirometers and FiO2s and FbO2s, you've lost your crowd. They don't want to know about that. But if you tell them, hey, listen, I know you're kind of sick, or you're presenting them, let's say, this book, and say, listen, these two characters on the cover, they're inside you right now, and they're trying to help you to feel better in their own challenge. That's already, like, for the child, like, what's he talking about? It's kind of intriguing. But at the same time, if they've read it, it kind of gives them a sense of confidence that, so there's these people inside me that are trying to make me feel better. Are you going to root for those kids? Right? And your well-being is based on them getting over the challenge put in front of them. You're going to root for them, or you're going to say, I hope they don't make it, right? Obviously, it provides a sense of confidence and a sense of, also the sense of, I'm not alone in this. There's other people dealing with this, right? And that's a huge part of it as well. My friends aren't going to laugh at me or poke their finger at me because I have to take an inhaler. Oh, hopefully not, because I have to take an inhaler before recess and whatnot, right? I'm sure you've dealt with that as well, right? So you kind of hopefully try to normalize it a little bit, and then along the way they get to learn a little bit. And as they get older and more in adulthood, they realize, okay, now I can deal with more of those adult terms, and I know what these different medicines are doing for me and why. And where they came from, right? It kind of answers the question why.
I see it as such a valuable resource to have in the classroom, for that reason alone, really. I mean, for a lot of reasons, but that one in particular, hiding when you're taking your inhaler because it's not normalized is a real problem. It's not something you want to do. You don't want to have to go to the change room to take your inhaler. Well, that's when something's going to happen. That's when the potential is there for you to pass out, to faint, and to not have the help that you need.
Yeah.
So normalizing it is incredibly important. And one thing that I do, so I do motivational talks as well, and I speak with students. And one of the first questions I ask them is, who here has asthma? And they put their hands up, and I let them know, hey, you're not alone.
If you're able to transfer a sense of control, that is automatically coupled with a sense of autonomy. Right now, I have control, so I can start to manage this. Well, whatever age I am, you'd be surprised how forward-thinking the children are. It's amazing.
Imagine a child struggling to breathe at school. Studies show that children who understand how their lungs work and can recognize early warning signs are much more likely to use their inhalers correctly and safely during an attack. I'd like to move on now, Dr. Schnellinger, to broader asthma care and systems. Emergency care is one part of asthma management. What do you think are the most important steps parents, schools, and communities can take to prevent ER visits and keep children healthy?
Well, a very global question, because you can look at that at varying levels. We hopefully, I don't know about the states or not, but hopefully we could trust the people that we entrusted with making the big decisions on a government level are also helping to make decisions that might have those factors involved, right? There's, how do we prevent triggers from being pollution, forest fires, things like that, right? There are various things that can be done to try to minimize those things, which could affect you or a child down the road with asthma, right? But then in the classroom, my hope would be that somebody gets the booklet that says, you know what, guys, instead of reading a book, or instead of like talking about asthma this week, you're going to have to write a book, and all the kids are going to I have to read a book this week. But we're going to chop this book up a little bit over a week or two's time, And then by the end of it, you're going to learn not only about asthma, but about the lungs and about these different medicines and why things are being done to help yourself or your classmate. You're going to learn that your classmate, when he's out from school, this is why. And it's not a joke. It's something that he needs to deal or she needs to deal with, right? So there's all sorts of things from a teaching realm that you could twist the angle a little bit to make it a little less threatening. I'll say more fun. And illness is never fun, but more fun, if you will. Maybe a little more engaging, where the child is like, oh, I don't just have to read a book about asthma. I could read a book about this adventure. I'm actually learning about that as part of that adventure. And then, I had the YMCA was very positive about the book here in the States. They have something called Camp Super Kids, which is an asthma camp. And they wanted to center some of their, it's children are at camp, they're swimming and canoeing and doing all the things they should be doing in the summertime. But they would have teaching sessions along the way, and they wanted to use the book and certain chapters of the book to define or design certain activities around the chapter. So that, again, they're learning as they're playing. And as a kid, that's really what you're a kid. You want to just play, but okay, I get the benefit of learning as well. And I can maybe take 2 or 3 or 4 of those lessons with me when I'm an adult. Maybe not all of them, but a few of the main ones. Very important. Yeah.
Are there systemic or social barriers that you've seen affect asthma outcomes, and how can storytelling or education help bridge those gaps?
Yeah, so for sure. And as we talked before, there are varying degrees of socioeconomic status, access to care. I had a patient, this is before the pandemic. The child was younger. I think she was about 2 years old, and she was there for an asthma exacerbation. And I went to go see her, and we're going to start some nebulizations, things like that, treatment. And the mother left the room and came out and came to the desk, and she just started crying. And I went to go console her, and I said, what's the matter, Mom? And we're trying to care for the child. She's doing okay. We're doing what we can. We're just getting started here. And she said, no, you don't understand. And she pulled a letter out of her pocketbook, and she let me read it. And it was basically a letter from the electric company saying that tonight at midnight, her electric is being shut off, and she wouldn't be able to run her nebulizer machine for her child because she would have no electricity. And she told me, she was like pleading with me that she said, I swear I have resources coming. I'm starting a new job, but it's not until the end of the week, and I won't have electricity. I mean, you imagine that. Put yourself in that spot, right? And you're looking at your 2-year-old, you're doing the right things for your child. You're not doing anything bad, but the circumstances of life are kind of taking over here. So I try to console her and care for her and hopefully let her know that child was getting good care. But then I said, you know what? I'm going to go a little out of bounds here. I'm going to take that letter. And I went and called the electricity company and pleaded with them, just give this woman a week. She'll get it together, and she'll be able to cover the tab. She has a job coming. And I have to say, all credit to the big bad electric company. The woman on the other side was very gracious, and you could tell she understood the magnitude of what was going on. And she kind of said, listen, under the table, we'll let this go a week, but I can't do more than that. But I said, you've done plenty. This mother will be very thankful, and she was. So yeah, things like that are real.
Environmental triggers like air pollution, household smoke, or pollen can worsen asthma symptoms. Awareness, early intervention, and as we discussed already, having a clear asthma action plan are proven ways to reduce hospital visits and keep kids safe. I'd like to move on now to part 5, which is personal reflections and advice. For clinicians, authors, or educators who want to combine storytelling with health education, what advice would you give?
Well, someone like yourself who wants to write a book, right, in the future, or who wants to further learning and care for the first thing is to find your niche, right? What's your audience? Who are you writing for? Is it a memoir, like you said, or is it something like I did to try to look at asthma in this way? And then what is your end goal with it? Obviously, yours will be more of a memoir of your walk through life, with asthma or not. What's the focus? Is it going to be kind of like how asthma walked the road with me or not, right? And then trying to find people who would support that effort. I think that it's also very important, as I learned, and not learned, but expected, but really learned along the way, is that be open to the critique. There are many incredible books on shelves in homes and apartments right now that are waiting to be published, but sometimes people are afraid to open themselves up to others saying this may not be good or beneficial, and then that might affect them behavioral health wise, things like that. With this one, I kind of steamrolled ahead and I said, well, this is what I'm doing. And if people like it, great. And if they don't, well, then, then great. But if it helps one or two or nine people, then it worked, right? So don't be afraid of that. If you're confident in what you're doing and you feel like there's real value in it for yourself or somebody else or both, just do it.
What are you most hopeful for about the future of asthma care, especially for kids and families navigating the condition daily?
Uh, yeah, for me, the question is, am I most hopeful or what do I hope? Like I said before, I hope that the people that have the varying powers to make decisions that might affect asthmatics down the line make the right one from that level. As we see every day, there's so many choices that I would have done different, but okay. Uh, uh, from varying factors, good, bad, plus, minus, whatever, but it might be affecting someone downstream. On the more local level, you hope that we as clinicians continue to look to advance asthma care, uh, uh, push, the asthma action plans, the people that study the numbers and lines continue to create medicines and things that hopefully will help where you need to take it less often to stay stable, so to speak, with your asthma. From the public level, like yourself, you hope that people continue to recognize, no, I know what triggers my asthma. I'm going to avoid that as best as possible. I'm going to try to stick to my action plan. I'm not going to live in my illness. I'm going to live with it, but not in it like you have, for sure.
I'd like to move on now, Dr. Schnellinger, to guest final thoughts and plugs. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners, upcoming projects, maybe school programs or resources? Where can listeners purchase the Medicine Stars for one, which I think I already mentioned, and how might parents or teachers use it effectively?
Yeah, thanks so much. So as far as plugs, first and foremost, I'd like to thank yourself and Beyond the Wheeze for having me. This is truly, truly great. And I just love talking about this stuff and trying to spread that, that wellness out there. I do like to thank Jenna Reynolds over at Asthma Canada. She was very kind along the way. Asthma Canada was very influential in helping to shape the in the classroom section. I come from the States. You're from Canada. Listen, there's different medicines. A lot of them are the same, but some are different. Some of the critiquers from Asthma Canada are like, well, what about this medicine? What about that medicine? I'm like, well, we don't want to get too deep in the woods here. But at the same time, I understand, like, you have to respect that. So shout out to them. In the book, there's a character, Jean-Marc, who's a real person, Jean-Marc Johannes, who's a professional skateboarder in South Africa. He, much like yourself, had debilitating asthma as a younger child and couldn't go out and play soccer and things like that with his friends because he would end up in hospital much of the year, much like yourself. So his mom gave him a skateboard and said, here, just maybe do tricks outside. Next thing you know, he's in the Olympics or fighting for a position in the Olympics, which is, again, another ode to someone living with it and not in it. And that's great. And so shout out to him. And he gave an endorsement. It was very kind. I actually had a different name for that character. And with his endorsement and his kindness, I switched that name to his to give him also hopefully some respect for what he has done with his asthma and his journey. As far as future goes, I have, again, I said that my niche, as we talked about, is sort of trying to click an adventure with an illness. I have about 7 adventures in my head already. Finding the right illness to click with those is the trick. I'm itching I have diabetes on my head right now. That's another one where, pumps and all sorts of things like that, and children with diabetes and having to prick themselves is kind of becoming old school now, where they can learn a lot. So that's future stuff. I was invited to the Midwest Regional Respiratory Conference. Hopefully I'll be speaking there in the near future if they go through and invite me. This book is also from a medicine standpoint for those who are interested. I heard a lecture once and I thought, oh, I like this. It's called Translational Medicine, and in the book is part. I didn't know it at the time. I was maybe asking, like you said, a question before, something you picked up on along the way. I realized like, oh, maybe this book is a little like translational medicine. That ability when someone, your friend or your parent or a physician tells you something, what you receive on the other side may vary. It may be different, right? What you're actually picking up. So in asthma teaching, that is a big part of it. How do you keep it sweet and simple, bullet points that they're getting what they need to for that visit and not getting too deep in the woods? So that's another area that I look to maybe learn a little bit more about for myself to inject that a little bit more in future adventures. Yeah.
Sounds like a busy future for you in authorship, that's for sure.
Great.
So now I'd like to move on to the final question, and I'm sure you know what question that is, and it's a little bit of a philosophical one. So here it goes. Whether you have asthma or not, every breath we take is a gift. A reminder of our resilience, our drive to keep going, and our power to define our own limits. With a single breath, you have the potential to move mountains and change the world. So with that in mind, if you had only one last breath, but with it the power to influence the world, what would your message be?
Let's put it this way. Everything you want in this world is just one dream away. So I reckon you should go home and start dreaming.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights, experiences, and for creating the Medicine Stars, which is helping children and families understand asthma in a way that's both engaging and empowering as well. To our listeners, if you found today's episode helpful, please subscribe, share it, and leave a review. All information related to this episode, as well as previous episodes, including show notes, guest bios, and additional resources, can be found at beyondthewheeze.ca/podcast. A full recap blog is posted every Friday following an episode release on both the website and Beyond the Wheeze LinkedIn page. If you have questions you'd like asked to our guests, topics you'd like discussed, an interesting story you'd like to share, or are interested in being a guest yourself, contact me via the contact form on our website. Episodes are released every second Tuesday. Until next time, keep pushing forward, keep breathing deep, and never let anything hold you back.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Wheeze. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share. Follow us on Instagram at Beyond the Wheeze, and or follow me at the Asthma Runner for more updates. Keep breathing strong, and remember, your potential has no limits. Until next time.